Hello viewer, welcome for Business Studies Form 3. You can talk to us through our SMS number 4007, Facebook Arimu TV, or Twitter handle which is Arimu TV_KE. Today we are going to look at demand. What is demand and all about demand, the demand curve. But before that, I want us to look at our last lesson. Last lesson, remember, you are talking about the price, advertising, and consumer income. That is the question that I left you with last time. So you are supposed to explain how the price, advertising, and consumer income decreases demand of products. I would expect you to say that if the price of product increases, the demand decreases. Remember, I explained that even an individual demands more if the prices are low, but when the prices are high, one demands less. Advertising, if you don't advertise your product, the demand does not go up. So advertising increases demand, but not advertising or failure to advertise lowers demand. The other one you're supposed to explain how it lowers demand is the consumer's income. And if one's income decreases, you find that demand or the person's purchasing power goes down, and therefore, on the other hand, if the consumer's income increases, if you look at when the prices are 40, Mr. Bundu is demanding 15 kilograms of tomatoes as compared to when the prices are at 100. He is only demanding 1 kilogram of tomato. So the higher the price, the lower the demand, and the lower the price, the higher the demand. Let's now look at the demand curve. A demand curve is a graphical representation of the relationship between the quantity of a commodity and the corresponding prices at a given period of time. And it's important to note that demand curve slopes downwards from left to right, and that one it defines what the relationship that we are talking about between the quantity demanded and the price of a product. And we are going to look more into that, and you are going to realize that the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and that is why the demand curve slopes downwards from left to right. And from what we have just found out about the quantity demanded and price, that one happens to demand more if the prices are low, and one also demands less when the prices are high. Even you, viewer, you would wish to buy more goods when the prices are very low, and you also limit the amount of goods that you are purchasing if the prices are very high. So let's now look at the law of demand. And the law of demand states that the higher the price of a commodity, the lower the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity. So if you are asked to define the law of demand, just say the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. And that one is clearly illustrated by that demand curve you see just next to that explanation, that the higher the prices are usually on the y-axis and the quantity demanded on the x-axis. And from what is a demand curve, which slopes downwards from left to right, you can see that if the prices are at 5, the quantity demanded is 100. If the prices decreases from 5 to 4, you can see the quantity demanded increases from 100 to 200. If the prices drops further to 3, the quantity demanded increases to 300. If they continue to decrease further, if the price continue to decrease further, for instance, where the price is 1, you can see the quantity demanded is 500. So that's why we are saying the law of demand, The higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded, and that is how we come up with that shape of the demand curve. Let's now look at the movement of the demand curve. When you talk about the movement, from the way you understand the word movement, it is to change of position from one position to another. But now when you talk about the demand curve, we are going to look at two types of movement. One is the movement along the demand curve, and the other one is the shift of the demand curve. Shift of the demand curve is whereby the demand curve acquires a totally new position from where it was. But when you talk about the movement of the demand curve along the demand curve, the position of the demand curve does not change, but meant along. But I'm going to explain that further in the course of the lesson. And let's start with the movement along a demand curve. From the law of demand, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. Beside that, we have a demand curve, and we have various prices. And I want us to start where the price is at P3. And I've told you once again that the price is usually on the y-axis, quantity demanded on the x-axis. And number one, before we look at how movement along a demand curve comes about, it is important that you note that movement of a demand curve, or movement along a demand curve is caused by none other factor than the price. Remember, in the previous lessons, we talked about the factors affecting demand. And in the factors affecting demand, we said each and every factor can either increase or decrease demand. Now, when you're talking about the movement along a demand curve, it is only caused by price. Please note that the movement along a demand curve is only caused by the changes in price. When you talk of changes in price, price can either increase or decrease. Let's now look at our diagram there, and we are going to start from where we have P3. Let's say now our product is retailing at a price P3, and if the present price is P3, the quantity that is being demanded is Q3. Now, let's say for instance it happens that the price increases. When we talk increasing, it goes up. So if price increases, for instance, from P3 to P1, what is going to be the effect? The effect is that the quantity demanded is going to decrease. Originally, if price has increased from P3 to P1, and also as a result, the quantity demanded is going to decrease from Q3 to Q1. So quantity demanded has decreased. And if the price can decrease or the price can go down to the quantity demanded is going to increase from Q3 to Q5. If we look at the demand curve, what is happening? When price increases to P3 to P1, quantity demanded also decreases from Q3 to Q1. And what happens? You'll find that there is some movement that is happening along the demand curve. When there is an increase in price, there is a movement along the demand curve from Y to X. That is, there is a movement along the demand curve from point Y to point X. On the other hand, if the price decreases from P3 to P5, remember at P3 it is at point Y. If the price decreases from P3 to P5, find that the quantity demanded increases from Q3 to Q5, and therefore the movement along the demand curve is from Y to Z. And that is how we explain the movement along a demand curve. But we are going to look further into details. Let's look at the effect of increase in price now only. Let's look at an increase in price only along the demand curve so that you can now understand better. From the law of demand, an increase in prices decreases demand. An increase in prices decreases demand. And I've given you a very good example. If price increases from P3 to P1, there is a decrease in quantity demanded from Q3 to Q1. And there is a movement along the demand curve. The demand curve moves from point Y to point X. That is what we mean by movement along the demand curve. You can see the demand curve is not changing its position. What is happening is that there is change of points from point Y to point E to point X. That is due to the increase in prices. Let's now look at the effect of a decrease in price, that is in movement of the demand curve, along the demand curve. A decrease in price still from the row of demand. When price decreases, there is an increase in the quantity of a commodity demanded, and our starting point was P3. If price decreases from P3 to P5, quantity demanded increases from Q3 to Q5. So, the demand curve, there is a movement along the demand curve that is from point Y to point Z. And that is all about the movement of a demand curve, which is determined by the price only, the factor price only. Let's now look at the shift in demand curve. And earlier on, I said shift in demand curve is whereby the demand curve totally acquires a new position. The demand curve acquires a totally new position. Shift in the demand curve can happen in two ways. There could be a shift towards right or a shift towards left, but you are going to look into that in details. So, shift in demand curve is whereby the demand curve changes its original position to a new position. And I've said demand curve can either be shift to the right or shift to the left. So let's now look at that into details. Let's start with the shift to the right. A shift to the right, please note that a shift to the right, that one is caused by all the other factors apart from prices, but factors increasing in the quantity demanded. Remember, when you are talking about factors affecting demand, we're saying a shift to the right is caused by the factors that increase demand of a product apart from prices. Prices causes a movement along a demand curve. So put that one aside when it comes to the shift of the demand curve. So shift to the right, I'm saying it's caused by those factors that increase demand. So anytime you see a question on shift toward right, remember it is factors that increases demand that brings about a shift to the right. And those factors could be from the factors from the many factors that we discussed. For instance, we talked about the consumer's income. And when you are looking at the factors in general, we said that an increase in consumer's income increases demand, whereas a decrease in consumer's income decreases the quantity of good demanded. But now we are very specific. We are talking about a shift to the right, which we are saying it results from factors that increases demand. So those factors that causes a shift to the right would be, number one, an increase in consumers' income. The other one would be a positive change in consumers' tastes and preferences. So find that if the goods, the taste of the product is favorable to the consumers, they will demand more. And therefore, the demand curve would shift to the right. The other factor is an increase in price of substitute good. Remember, we looked at the relationship between goods and we said goods can be related into two, either to the other one. Now, let's look at the substitute goods. A substitute good, from what we defined a substitute good, it's a good that can be used in place of another. A very good example would be the brands that we have for toothpastes. We can have Aquafresh or Close Up. But you see, you can use one in place of the other. So these are two goods that are competing in the fact that they are substitute goods. So an increase in price of substitute goods means that that other good will not be demanded. So if that other good increases its price, its demand goes down. And for the one that has not increased its price, its demand increases. And therefore, the shift of the demand curve to the right. Let's continue with factors that would cause a demand curve to shift to the right. And the other factor that would make demand to increase or the demand curve to shift towards the right is an aggressive product promotion campaign. Remember, we talked of advertising as a factor that affects the demand of a product, and we said if you advertise your product, demand is likely to go up, or in other words, actually demand goes up because many people get informed about your product, and therefore they demand that product, and therefore that increases demand. So an aggressive product promotion campaign would make the demand curve to shift towards right. The other factor would be an increase in the size of population. An increase in the size of population demanded more because each and every person wants to satisfy his or her needs. Therefore, an increase in the size of population tends to increase the demand of a product. Therefore, that one shifts the demand curve to the right. And the last but not least is the favorable government policy. For instance, an example of a favorable government policy that would make a demand of a product to increase would be decrease in taxation. Decrease in taxation. If the government decreases tax, that lowers the cost of production, and therefore the final price for the product will go down. And remember from the rule of demand, the higher the price, the lower the demand, and vice versa. So if the government have favorable policies like what I've just told you, reducing tax or giving tax holidays, that increases the demand of a product, and therefore a shift of the demand curve to the right. Let's now look at the shift of the demand curve to the left, a shift to the left. It is the opposite of the right. So a shift to the left, I know you would guess what that would imply, but a shift to the left implies a decrease in demand. All the factors that we discussed earlier on, all the factors that we talked about that affect demand, we said they can either increase or decrease the demand of a product. And now we are looking now at the decrease side. All the discussed factors can cause a decrease in demand of a product. And it is important that you note that a shift of the demand curve to the left implies a decrease in demand of a product. And the factors that would bring about a shift towards the left, that is, in other words, a decrease in the quantity of goods demanded would be, number one, a decrease in price of substitute commodities. Substitute commodities are goods that you can use in place of another, in place of the other one. So you'll find that you are competing. If the price of the competing product goes down, that means the price of the other one is higher. People usually go for what is cheaper. And if the substitute good happens to decrease its price, the demand for the other product goes down, and therefore the demand curve shifts towards left. The other one is the decrease in consumers' income. This is because the consumers' purchasing power goes down. So if the income of the consumers goes down, therefore the demand also goes down, and therefore that would lead to the demand curve shifting towards left. The other factor that would contribute to a decrease in demand, or what we are saying, a shift of the demand curve towards left, is the negative change in individuals' tastes and preferences. And this is whereby maybe the taste of the product is not favorable to the consumer. And if the taste of a product is not favorable even to you, you will not demand more of that product, and therefore that lowers the demand of that product. So negative change in individuals, consumers' taste and preferences lowers demand, and that is what is resulting to the demand curve shifting to the left. That is the demand curve. From the diagram that we have there, you can see the demand curve is shifting from D1 to D2. We continue with the factors that is likely that makes the demand curve to shift towards left, and the other one would be less aggressive product promotion. This whereby one is or a company becomes reluctant of advertising its product, and failure to that makes the demand of the product to go down, or the demand curve shifting towards left. The other one would be decrease in size of population. Remember, the more the people, the more the demand, because each and every person wants to satisfy his or her needs. So if the size of the population is big, the demand is high. So what would cause a decrease in demand would be a decrease in the size of the population. The other one is unfavorable government tax. Unfavorable government tax. For instance, increase in tax. Increase in the tax of a product. Remember, the higher the tax, the higher the price of a product, because for the producer must always make profit. So the amount of tax that is paid to the government is accounted for when the final price of the product is being determined. So where the goods are taxed, the price goes up, and as a result, the price of the product also increases. And remember, people demand more when the prices are low. When the prices are low. So increase in tax would make the price of the product to increase. And therefore, demand will definitely go down. Thank you for watching, but I will not review without an assignment. So attempt the following question. Number 1, distinguish between movement along a demand curve and a shift in a demand curve. Once again, distinguish between movement along a demand curve and a shift in a demand curve. That is what we have just discussed. And number 2, state the law of demand. We are going to look at those questions during our next lesson. So attempt them and see how you are going to fare. Thank you for watching. But before we end the lesson, let's look at our quote of the day. Our business quote of the day says that the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. What does this mean? This means that if there is no way you can succeed without working. So work will always come before success. So success can only come before work, only in the dictionary. So for you to succeed, you need to work, and not just working, but working smart with determination. Thank you for watching. See you next lesson.